Hi there, welcome back to another Crypto Dave video. It's Friday, which means another crypto interest rates and news update. Today is the 16th of October 2020, and as always we'll start by taking a look at any interest rates or new coins that have been added to these platforms. And the big news this week, and we'll talk about this at length in a minute, but it's the changes to the rates of CRO. So 2%, 4% and 6% as of today. It's changed 3 times this week already, so whether this will be accurate going into next week, who can tell. As always, if you see any discrepancies in this spreadsheet, please let me know either in the comments or via email. My email address is always at the bottom of the sheet here, cryptodaveuk@gmail.com. But apart from the CRO changes, nothing really big to report this week, as far as I can tell. So let's have a look at the token prices. And as we can see here, and we'll talk about this, all tied into the same kind of issues with CRO reduction in staking. But you can see here, CRO down 9.3% over the last week compared to Celsius, up 2.3%. So it's held onto all those gains it's made in the last couple of months. And nice to see Nexo had a really big pump yesterday. It's come back down substantially from there, but still up almost 8% over the last 7 days. So it's nice to see a little bit of kind of positive action for kind of Nexo. But this crypto.com, basically it's down a huge amount because of decreases basically to the interest rates earned by CRO, but I think more than that by the way that they have handled these kind of updates. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more detail about that. So basically, as of yesterday, this was uploaded onto the kind of blog, basically the crypto.com blog, but basically the new rates are 2%, 4%, 6%, and then if you are holding on the card or on the exchange, which used to be 20% staking on the exchange, that's 10% now. Now it says here the old rate of 1%, 2%, 4% and 6%, but this was only an old rate for, what, 2 days? So nothing really seemed to be happening at the beginning of the week. Last week we had the big reduction in the flexible kind of staking terms, but nothing else. And then at the beginning of the week, the usual email went out with 18% as their kind of like top tier rate. Then the day after, they suddenly slashed the rates to 1%, 2% and 4%. And this is the flexible term. This is a 1 month lockup, and this is the 3 month lockup. And it didn't matter how many CRO you held or anything like that. These were basically the rates. And there was a massive kind of backlash because the previous day they'd emailed, or 2 days before they'd emailed to say there were kind of no change, or not to say that there were no changes, but with the original rates. They didn't announce these, they just slashed the rates, and there was a massive backlash. Certainly across kind of Reddit, the crypto.com subreddit, stuff like that. And I think because of the massive backlash, and more importantly, the big decrease in price, you can see how CRO really kind of tanked when this kind of happened, as people just started kind of flocking to sell their CRO really. Now, bear in mind that a huge amount of CRO is locked up for a long period of time. For example, I have over 10,000 locked up on the exchange under the staking system for 6 months, and I've still got another 3 months, I think, something like that, 2 or 3 months to go on that. So all those kind of CRO are locked up. So it was only really CRO that wasn't locked into 1 month, 3 month, or the exchange that was kind of being sold. But I actually removed all my CRO from the supercharger event and sold it because I thought it would go down further, and it has actually gone down further. So I missed this first kind of drop, but I sold around here, I think, and then it's dropped again, sort of steadied a little bit, and then dropped a little bit again today. So we'll see where this kind of finishes. But I think more the fact that they absolutely decimated the rates was the fact that, you know, there was no kind of like advance warning. It wasn't announced. Even when it happened, it was only people kind of going in and going, hang on, what's happened to these kind of rates? They didn't kind of announce anything. And then I think Chris, you know, posted this sort of like slightly kind of sheepish tweet saying, oh, you know, in order to kind of like, you know, make ourselves profitable, we've had to come slash the rates. But there was such a backlash. And I think more than that, the fact that they saw a really big decrease in the price of CRO that made them then sort of like backtrack somewhat to these new rates. Now, whether it was a complete PR disaster, whether they just wanted to come to something like this, and they few people are saying, oh, they dropped it more because they always knew they'd end up sort of here, and then it looks like they're the good guys kind of boosting it back up. Now, I don't think that's true, because I think it had a really poor effect on the CRO price, but also from the community in general. I see a lot of stories of people going, right, I've had it enough with crypto.com now. This is just like the straw that broke the camel's back. We had the whole kind of nonsense about MCO, people held MCO being forced into kind of CRO at an inflated price. And then the one advantage of holding CRO was a really good kind of competitive interest rates. And now that they've been slashed, there is zero reason really, unless you're tied massively into the ecosystem, you're desperate to have some of the kind of card benefits. But even on the card side, there are alternatives now coming out. People like Swipe, I know Binance are planning to launch an actual proper credit card rather than a prepaid kind of debit card. But I think it's really kind of backfired. I think this is just the last in a long sort of line of really poor communication or no communication of kind of big changes in the platform. And I think this is, I'm not saying the death knell for crypto.com, but I think they're going to lose a lot of users. A lot of people seem to be saying that they're going to be moving to Celsius. They were like, this is the last straw, I'm moving to kind of Celsius, I'm fed up with being treated like this. So it's been a really negative week, I think, for crypto.com. Obviously people that are locked up in kind of staking, they will continue to get the locked up prices until the stakes kind of renew. But I can see the price of CRO. I mean, I did mention this last week that I didn't see it going up at all, and maybe it would slightly kind of creep down, but I didn't anticipate basically news like this really kind of like dumping the kind of price. But I can't see the price of CRO going back anything like where it was before. Possibly in dollar terms, during the next bull run, because it will just kind of track up with everything else. But certainly in terms of BTC terms, I can't see it ever regaining its kind of its all-time high from before. And they obviously tried to kind of backtrack a little bit, because immediately after this and the backlash, there was another email that came through with something like 9 ways to kind of like maximize your profits from the CRO platform, from the crypto.com platform. And they talked about stuff like the syndicate, they talked about the supercharger, without sort of making note of the fact that these are not available to people in the US. So if you're stuck in the US with CRO tokens, you really are kind of like done for, unless you're have a huge amount, and we're talking, in order to make it kind of worthwhile staking some of these amounts of CRO now, you'd need to have something $200,000-$300,000 worth of other crypto in the platform, stuff like kind of Bitcoin and Ethereum, in order to make it kind of worthwhile holding those coins. So I can see it continue to track down. I can see people continuing to sell off CRO, and I think even stuff like the cashback, which is always paid in CRO, I can see people just kind of selling that on a periodic basis rather than holding it. I think in the past, people probably held onto it thinking, well, we'll get decent interest rates, and the price was kind of like going up quite frequently. So I think people held onto it, and I think a lot of those rewards coming back in CRO will be sold off. So I think there's going to be a lot of selling pressure going forward. I can't see really any decent upside for what's happened over this last week, particularly not just the interest rates, but also just the kind of like regard with which crypto.com seems to be held by a large number of the community. But anyway, we've talked about that enough. Let's move on to, in some ways, a similar type announcement, but handled in a completely different way. So we'll move on to Celsius. Now, Celsius this week announced, or I think it was yesterday even, announced that they were going to be changing their rewards program. So those of you who know Celsius will know that if you're an international user not based in the US, you can choose to earn in Celsius tokens, and if you hold a certain amount of your total holdings in Celsius tokens, you get some bonuses. So there's bronze, silver, gold and platinum, 5, 10, 20 and 30%. Now platinum, I believe, used to be 35%, so they've retweaked these, but they announced it, they emailed basically saying, they were going to make some changes. They're going live, I believe, on Monday, but it was all kind of like quite transparent. They came up, they weren't ridiculous kind of like changes. They didn't kind of drop rates by 75% or anything like that. They've tweaked them down. Obviously the price of Celsius has been going up a huge amount, so I think a lot of people are probably moving up these kind of tiers without actually buying any more Celsius, or actually earning a lot in Celsius, just because of the increases in price. So because of that, they've tweaked the levels, and I think that's a fair thing to do, and I think the way that it was handled was pretty decent as well. It was announced, it wasn't retrospective. They didn't just try and squeeze it through without saying anything and then kind of have a big backlash. So they've tweaked some of the loyalty tiers. If you are holding Celsius, in order to benefit from some of these slightly higher tiers, so bonuses on interest rates and discounts on your loans, you might want to kind of log into the app beginning of next week, and making sure you're holding enough US dollar value and percentage terms of your complete portfolio in Celsius, because if you were taking advantage of the increase in price to get into some of these higher tiers, you may have dropped back down a tier or so. But that's something to keep an eye on. Back to crypto.com now. Something else that was slipped out earlier this week was the referral program. So people referring others onto the app will get a $50 US a $50 bonus in CRO, and that's going to be reduced to 25. So this is how things should be done. So this was announced earlier this week. It will go live at the beginning of November, so people still have another couple of weeks to benefit if they were hoping to refer people. I think with the latest nonsense, they're probably going to get a lot less referrals than maybe they would have done before. But if you are referring people, that will drop beginning of November from $50 per sign up to $25. As always, I put links to all these articles in the description below. And then finally, as mentioned last week, now this seems to be confirmed now that the syndicate is going back to a 2-weekly event, so they're not going to be every week anymore, only every 2 weeks. And Elron Gold is the next event. So we mentioned this last week. It will go live next Tuesday morning. So that's it for this week. Let me know if you're holding CRO. Let me know what you think about what they did this week, not just in terms of the percentages and the big change in rates, but the way it was kind of handled. Let me know if you're continuing to support the ecosystem, if you're continuing to hold coins in there and use it for staking and earning, or whether you're actually kind of like considering moving some of your coins to another platform. So it'd be really interesting to see what other people's opinions are. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. As always, I hope you're all keeping safe and well. If you can hit the thumbs up, that would be fantastic. If you're not subscribed, consider doing that and hit the bell icon. But hopefully I'll see you on the next video. But until then, have a great day. Bye bye.